Howdy folks, Justin here, and wow, what an exciting, dramatic introduction that was to our card preview. I hope you're as excited as I am. We're going to debut one of the featured mechanics in Heroes of Skyrim, and if you are familiar with the lore, you might have been able to figure out who that attractive but secretive woman was in that video. If you're not, I'm going to go ahead and debut the card right now. That is Innkeeper Delphine. Delphine is, of course, a blade undercover, deep cover, sleeper agent, if you will. And her card represents that perfectly. She's a 3 magic, 2/3 legendary creature. After you play a dragon or shout, Innkeeper Delphine changes into Grandmaster Delphine. Change is one of the mechanics, along with Transform, that's going to be showing off some cool stuff in Heroes of Skyrim. And in this case, it represents, her call to arms when the dragons come back. So the question now becomes, at what point, like, what does this need to transform into in order to be playable? I mean, a 2/3 legendary 3 magic creature. I mean, looking at you, Astrid, even with some special text, might not make the cut. So, if you play a dragon or a shout, this needs to turn into something pretty dramatic in order to warrant a spot in your deck. I think you're going to be impressed with what happens when you play a dragon or a shout. She becomes Grandmaster Delphine right here. A 5/5 that can't be damaged or targeted by enemy dragons. This is beastly. I mean, we've probably seen more dragon previews so far for this set, and we haven't seen a lot of cards so far, than we have dragons in the game right now. In fact, definitely. So dragons are going to be everywhere as soon as the expansion is released. And Delphine's going to do a good job both supporting your own dragon strategies by giving you an early creature that you can, maybe trade into something small with, as well as giving you, just this dragon-slaying monster on the board. You may notice she's got a fancy sword, which was depicted in the incredible introduction we had. But what I really like about Delphine is that flexibility, right? Because, like, it's unlikely that you're going to have Delphine flipped, well, here's what I want to say. Coming down as a 2/3 lets you set up for a game that is trying to win the late game with massive dragons, okay? So it gives you something to do in those early turns. It's in the ramp color, so it's going to go nicely into a deck that's ramping into giant dragons. But even then, part of the way that Scout Ramp has traditionally made it to the late game is by having a whole host of small creatures with utility type effects that get you to the point where you're playing your massive creatures. I think the future of Scout Ramp might be something that includes Delphine as one of those cards that transforms into a much bigger threat as soon as you start laying down those dragons. Raw stat-wise, I mean, assuming that your deck is built to trigger her, a 5/5 for 3 is, of course, incredible on its own. This is like, Elder Mammoth. But this is going to also, depending on how prevalent dragons are, be incredibly powerful on board. I mean, we've already seen the Black Dragon, ironically not a dragon, from Follow the Dark Brotherhood, with its immunity to lethal, be a lot more powerful than I think people were probably anticipating. Delphine takes that a step further. She costs 1 less, and her immunity to dragons and inability to be targeted by them, so assuming there's not going to be a dragon, you have to assume there's going to be a dragon that when you play it does like 4 damage to a creature or something like this. That's not going to happen when Delphine's out there, to her anyway. She looks out for number 1. But I just think this is a really cool design. It's indicative of a deeper mechanic, this transform, thing, because the clause on this one, the shout or dragon, is really straightforward, and then the card she turns into is raw power, but also very straightforward. But I like that it's indicative of, a pretty tremendous, amount of depth for this mechanic. And hopefully we're going to see some of that when we see the companion cards and stuff like that, the werewolves that we're going to be getting. But I am just super excited by this card. I think Dragon Scout is going to be one of the first decks that I want to build. And we haven't even seen that many cards yet, but I've just been really impressed with what I've seen so far. And Delphine seems like she's going to fit in perfectly into that strategy. And let's compare this artwork too. I mean, these are some beautiful looking cards. The game has really, really stepped it up. I mean, I feel like the base set of the game, beautiful. I feel like the Madhouse collection, even better. And I think that Follow the Dark Brotherhood just included some absolutely gorgeous cards, and now I think Heroes of Skyrim is just taking it to a whole other level. I mean, you have the the classic high fantasy look done well, with all of these amazing touches that the Elder Scrolls lore gives you. I think we're going to see a lot of that here, and I think these are just absolutely beautiful. I mean, those mountains could be the mountains in my backyard. They're so perfect. I guess they're in my front lawn, but I do have mountains out there. I live in the front range of Colorado. Anyway, Innkeeper Delphine. Conclusion: this card will see play. Where is it going to see play? My first inclination, without seeing a whole lot of other cards from the set, is Scout Ramp, a new Dragon Scout Ramp deck. I think that you could make a strong case for this being in a warrior deck too, assuming we see some playable shouts or warriors. We've already seen Ulfric Stormcloak with some shout synergy, so I wouldn't be surprised to see a warrior dragon shout, potentially ramp deck using these cards. She's not a Nord, she's a Breton, so she's not going to get tutored up with Ulfric, but I think that's perfectly fine. I'm just really excited to see where this goes. I think that it's a really cool thing that they're introducing more change cards, more transform cards in this set, because you can have cards with relatively straightforward abilities like these two that together are pretty complicated. And yeah, I'll be playing Delphine, probably be playing Delphine day one in a scout deck. I'm probably going to try it in a warrior deck, and probably other decks too. We just haven't seen enough new cards yet. Anyway, keep in mind too, this card's power level increases every time you see a dragon or a shout. So this is one you're going to want to think back on every time a new dragon or a new shout is revealed. I, for one, welcome our new dragon overlords, guys. Alright, thanks for joining me. I'll see you all on the ladder.